There we go. All right, it happened.
Cool.
Finally, we are live. Thank you everybody, in the chat for being here and being patient. I am Nate from Hall Yeah Comics, and my guest today is another Nate. It's Nate McDonough. He is the creator of an indie comic called Grixly. So, welcome, Nate. Thank you so much for being here.
Nate, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. I really like the book and I'm excited to talk to you about it and your process and how you do everything and just have a good conversation. You're also somebody who really likes to dig through long boxes and find treasure, and I want to talk about that as well. Before we get going, we do have a few people in the chat, and I want to say hey to them. So thanks for being here. So there's Big Lyle Hobson, hangs out with me on Friday nights on Alan's channel. Hey, Big Lyle. And Rich from Big Nasty Comics. Yep, you're second. Lyle beat you today. Eric from SideQuest Comics, 3 interviews in a week. I'm the Johnny Carson. Sure. Eric Casagrande of The Big House. My friend Eric Himbo, thanks for being here, man. We're actually gonna go do a little digging tomorrow. And JSS, thank you, JSS, for being here and wielding the blue wrench for us today. And ask the deep questions. I'm going to start shallow.
Yeah, lob me a softball.
So before we get started, I do have a lot of questions, but I wanted to give you an opportunity just to introduce yourself and anything you want to say about the book and what you do.
Hello, my name is Nate McDonough. I'm the creator of Grixly Comics. I've been doing it for about 15, 16 years now. I put out a few issues every year. I recently collected a lot of stories that were specifically about digging for back issues and comics that are about the buying and selling of comics. I collected into a book called Long Boxes Volume 1. Seems like Nate and I have some sort of aesthetic overlap in taste and shop at even a few of the same shops. So we ended up chatting a fair bit, and here we are.
Very cool. I saw somebody ask up here. So just to start with, what does the title Grixly mean? Where does that come from?
Non sequitur. Just goofing around. Yeah. I almost called it a few even more ungoogleable things, but then just settled on that at the urging of my buddy a while back.
Well, it's unique enough that you remember it, and also I don't think you're gonna have anything confused with it. It's a good title. I like it. I discovered, so on Tuesday nights we do a stream where we look at the next day's books, and this one was solicited, and I absolutely fell in love with the cover here. There was just something about it, the way it was over exaggerated, but also it just had, indie comic cred to me. And I did look for it at my shop the next day and it wasn't there. And then a fellow YouTuber, Johnny from Johnny's Comic Stuff, he had ended up ordering a bunch of stuff from you, and he sent some to me. He sent some to Rich at Big Nasty Comics because we were all, kind of enthralled with that cover. And he sent way more than just that one. I got these. I love these, the connecting covers. I used them in
My buddy, you've got a buddy, Johnny, and that's from my buddy, John Meinrich. Cool. He did those. He's amazing.
And that was something that I noticed is you don't do the covers for the book. People do front. I guess I did see something you drew on the back of one of them.
I did the Wolverine Sabretooth one, but a lot of them lately have been friends,
Very cool. So how long have you said you've been doing this? About 13 years?
Since I was 21, about 16 years now.
Very cool. How long does it take you to put an issue together?
Not too long. I used to, I feel like the single solitary nice compliment across the board that I get from almost anyone is that I'm prolific,
Yeah.
And in my vanity, I aspire to be a little bit more, but I put together maybe 150, 200 pages a year. I've dialed that back a little bit, but I'd say, if I have no other task, if I can just work on it full time, if all other distractions are set to the side, I can do an issue end to end in a week.
Oh, wow.
But
How
I
many
do them a little more gradually than that.
how many pages on the interiors?
As few as 16, as much as 28, usually about 20 or 24.
Okay. And so one question I had was it's not a full-size book. So it's not it, I'm not exactly sure what the dimensions are.
Half size is how I've heard mini comics referred to in a slightly more serious sounding way, I suppose.
Okay. What about when you do your interiors, what ratio are you drawing at? Are you drawing at 14 by 17? Are you drawing by 8.5 by 11 and shrinking it down? Or are you drawing at this size?
9 by 12, but really, honestly, whatever kind of scrap paper I have that's sitting around. I had a buddy who worked at a print shop for a while. So I used to buy Bristol board every now and then. And, uh, I've had some comic artist friends who will tell you it's not too expensive a vice just to keep yourself in paper and ink. But I am pleased to get all my paper for free for a while now. But 8.5 by 11, 9 by 12. And as you can see by the gutter at the top and the bottom of those pages, it's not like a strict aspect ratio. It doesn't scale perfectly to it. But
Right.
I find myself stuck in a slightly imperfect rut nonetheless.
And okay, JSS. I in the description of this video, I put a link to Nate's Instagram, his sales page, and also his Patreon. Which on your Patreon, which I literally just discovered today, which I thought was kind of cool. For $2 a month, if somebody pays that, you send them 4 issues of Grixly because it's a quarterly book.
Yeah, and then usually an extra. This year, I've got Maximum Carnage bootleg. I'm working on with my buddy Colin Sims. That'll be going out to all subscribers in late fall, early winter.
That's all. I mean, for a self-published book, um, I think that's really fair because you can't be making a ton of money on there, uh, with your self-publishing and everything. Like, that was a question. How did you find the publisher, like, to create the book, and how do you get things distributed to the people who order or the people who are reading?
The Patreon makes it easy. Just kind of you've got those guys who've tried to do the subscription model before, even like spreadsheets existed. You John Porcelino's doing a King Cat. I can't imagine how difficult, how like insanity inducing that must have been. I uh I just sell through my online store. I do subscriptions and I do wholesale to a bunch of shops that I like. And the book, I get the copies myself just from an online printer that does it cheaper than anyone else, and I put them together. And then the book, it was Bookmobile printing. I've gone with a few different printers for like perfect bound volumes, just like nice looking books with spines over the years. But Bookmobile has far and away been the most pleasant, best to deal with, best value. My friend Sean Knickerbocker, a great comic artist as well, working very much in the same vein as my own stuff. He works there, and I was lucky enough to have him supervising the production on it. It came out looking pretty slick.
Cool. Yeah, I liked I saw the hardbound for long boxes that you did. That was a nice looking book. Um, Another question from the chat. I see you're using a Bic 7 millimeter clicker pencil, which I find is the best pencil to draw with. Always have.
Good eye, man.
Yeah, I buy those by whatever that big box is because I'm an elementary school teacher and my kids eat my pencils. So I buy those by the truckload, but they are good pencils. They're great for sketching and everything else. Were you formally trained in art, or are you a self-taught artist?
Mostly, I'd say self-taught. I was lucky enough to have a lot of good teachers in school. Like a few who are like faintly discouraging of comics or just spoke as them like a value leaning toward negative. But I
Yeah.
feel you can't really even hope for much better than that. You get art teacher who's just totally down with whatever you're doing and like can give you a boost, and then everyone else just views comics as like a vulgar but permissible thing. Uh,
Oh yeah.
Mr. Paul, I doubt Mr. Paul is watching, but he was the best. He definitely made me an artist for life.
I love hearing that. Yeah. Mr. Demont in my high school, he was not encouraging of comic book art at all, but he was very encouraging of any kind of creative outlet. And he was one of the first people to put a computer in front of his students and say use this as a means to make art. So I thought that was really cool back in the 90s when pixels were as big as your head.
I'd like to see
um,
a teacher too, because I feel like there's plenty of teachers out there who are like happy to uh, stick with whatever they know the best, and like whatever cliche could be said about the rigidity of age and old
yeah,
dog, new tricks, and all that.
right.
I hope to be a Mr. more like Mr. Dumont myself as the years elapse.
Yeah, for sure. You don't want to get stuck in your rut. Um, so I think we've already talked about the printing process, how you get things there. So let's go to the stories that you tell, because I mean I really have enjoyed reading these issues that I was gifted by my friend Johnny, and they're just like a lot of little vignettes of you, for the most part, traveling the country and digging for comic books. So, I guess before we get into the stories, though, are you a comic book collector? Like, are there books that you like? Because it seems like for the most part, you're going to dig to flip, but what are you flipping for? Like, a lot of
Man,
people like to buy comics to try to support the hobby, but yeah, what's your purpose for these cross country trips where you go digging?
sentimentality has definitely been exterminated, for better or worse. And people even get down on me every now and then where like, do you even read comics anymore? Do you even like comics anymore? But I do find myself pretty taken aback if I like buy a collection from a friend or acquaintance, and I process the whole thing. And then there's 1,000 different categories that I'm sorting books into. And then, of course, if I'm ever going through a collection, there's going to be a little pile that I keep for myself. But sometimes it'll be 3,000 comics, and there's only one or two that I have any interest in saving for myself. But I, I definitely do collect for myself. I feel like what I've been getting a kick out of lately is uh, I was buying some comics from a guy up in Denver a few days ago, and he does what most collectors do, where he tells me about these like rare, valuable Silver Age books, these sought after Golden Age, deep cuts, classic covers, whatever. And he's always kind of processing out the lower grade ones and trying to get higher grade ones. And not that I'm so contrarian by nature. Not that I ever calculated this very carefully, but if I have a 4.0 of a comic that I like, I'm happy to sell it for $10 and then grab a 3.0 and then sell that for $8 and then grab a 2.0 if they keep popping up in dollar bins. But
Right.
I do have a personal collection. It's pretty rough. It's heavy on reprints. It's but nothing that would blow your mind. I feel like I'm always it's a kind of tricky, where you go into a comic shop, and especially one that you've never been to before, and especially one of those like dingy basement ones, like single owner operator, unconventional operations, where you're like as much as in their home as
Yeah.
a stranger, and they want to get a read on you as quickly as possible. And they ask like, "What do you read? What are you looking for? What do you collect?" And you kind of have to like present yourself as well as possible in the first few seconds.
Oh
And
yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if I don't know if I have a good method yet, and I don't know if I'll ever get there, but I typically just find myself saying, "Oh, the old stuff, Kirby, Ditko. I'm a big fan of Corbin." And then I usually see where it goes from there, but there's not
I,
much more to it than Ditko, Kirby, and Corbin in the
I
two
mean,
boxes I keep for myself.
but for the old guy that's running that basement shop, that's a good answer. It makes you somebody who knows what quality and history is, and a guy like that, that's who they want to sell to. But then when you so you say that, but then when you go up there with your pile, or it seems like you will pull a long box out of places by reading these stories, that, a long box or more if you can, depending on what it is, because you put together little sets and you put together runs and you find, unknown or, not well-known keys, because you're going to flip those. Are you doing that, in order to get other things, or is this just a fun way to make money?
Fun way to make money. I feel like it's nice too, where like there's the pleasure of the work is disproportionately allocated, where I can go into a shop and I spend $2,000, and I guess it goes without saying, right? But that whatever like requisite amount of stripping rotting old bags and boards and grading and photographing and notes and creating the listings and corresponding with buyers and shipping them and even just putting like the new bags and boards together, where it's not like I'm not enjoying myself, but I do get excited, especially now that I live cross country, or from a lot of the shops that I like to go to, and the buying gets a little lopsided in the year, where
Yeah.
like just 2 or 3 times a year I'll spend $10,000 in 2 weeks,
Ooh,
it's coming up and I'm so excited, where it's like once in a blue moon I get a shop owner, because I feel like to one degree or another they all know, and sometimes they ask and I make no effort to obscure it, but then I definitely rarely volunteer it that I am flipping 99%
sure.
of what I'm buying. But that, like beggars can't be choosers, and how sad it is, not that I omit myself from the category, how many sellers and merchants like are a beggar or awfully close to one, what semantics aside, I love it, I love I love just cruising into a shop and buying a heap like that, because it's just one of those things where if you're like collecting and you're not selling, it's a demented thing to do and you'll ruin your life pretty quickly, buying like that. But I do know there's like many hybrids out there.
I'm surrounded by my poor decisions. You
Do
can't
you
see it
sell at
because
all though?
a little. So I have not sold a book on eBay, and I can't tell you how long. And
Respect.
backstage, you and I can talk about better ways to sell, because I definitely have tons of things that I talk about this a lot as a collector. There are things I legitimately loved, but when I look at them, I realize there's no reason to keep this anymore. I'm done. I've read it. I'm not going to reread it. It's time to give this to the next person who
Oh
loves
yeah.
it. Yeah, I had a lot of success on eBay for a little bit, and I've had some genius flips, some things that made me feel like I was a big damn man, but but it's been a long time since anything's moved on my store, and it's because I did want to ask you about this. Like, in my experience, at least, I feel like the market was way up, like it was a seller's market, and now that
Mhm.
market has dipped quite a bit to where it's way more of a buyer's market. Are you experiencing that at all, or?
Absolutely, and it was fun, and I perhaps even like belabor it in my work, but it sure was sweet. And I've got some friends who like I can tell it kind of curls their toes a bit that I'd made such like I don't know that I'd like I'm not a good ambassador for the genre of comics, for the art of comics, when it was like the height of speculation bubble frenzy just a few years ago, where you could I remember it was one of the best afternoons of my life. WandaVision was recently released, and
Yeah,
there was like a smattering of like Avengers West Coast issues that went from being dollar bin fodder to like 20, 30, $40 each. And
sure.
like at the time I was just on my bike and I didn't have a car, and I just biked to all the shops that were in biking distance, and I bought all of them for $2 to $3 a piece out of the back issue bins, and I went home and I listed them all in the next 48 hours. And just from like an afternoon's bike ride, I made $250, It's definitely not like that anymore. I feel like
Yeah,
whatever I'm doing now is probably very much whatever I've been doing for the last 2 or 3 years is probably very much like the uh slimmer but acceptable margins of your like vintage comic type who isn't too sleazy or keen to cash in while the getting's good and get out. I got comfy enough, and I feel like I like made enough like relationships with just other sellers and friends and people just looking to get out and whatever that I'll just, buy for X and sell for twice that. And it's not too much more glamorous than that.
Sure. I mean, I'm sorry, but like, my dad is a flipper, not of comic books, but of everything. So, I mean, he literally sent me a message just a little bit ago that he sold a bird feeder that he bought at my garage sale, not from me, but my neighborhood. It's like I got a bird feeder for $3, and I just sold it on Marketplace for 20. What you're talking about here, that's my life, buddy. Like it's how I grew up, and it's the game that,
That rocks. Because it's
it,
one thing to know like the first appearance of like so and so. It's another thing to have a sense of a bird feeder that is worth your time at the garage
it's
sale, you know?
the man is a craftsman for sure in terms of flipping.
That
Um,
rocks.
so Rich from Big Nasty Comics, he's from Ohio, and I had sent him a picture from one of the issues of Grixly because you had also talked about going to Mavericks, which is one of
Sure.
his local stores that he goes to. So he's like, he wants to know like where you're located because you've gone to these shops where both he and I, and we're pretty close together, have these connections. So if you're comfortable like talking about
Well,
how far you travel.
of course, Rich, how are you? I'm gonna guess you're an acquaintance of Jason and or Eric Schonborn, Jason Young. Tell those boys I say hi if you run into them down at Mavericks. I'm from I grew up all over. As a young adult, I moved to Pittsburgh, and I was there for almost 20 years. And all Pittsburgh has like a shocking density, like a shocking comic shop per capita, where there's just so many. And I
Yeah.
think that's what made it so appealing was hitting the dollar bins as hard like I did, where I think the competition of just like so many comic shops in that city, it kind of cut the value of otherwise like worthwhile books, perhaps even wall books, down to just throw it in the dollar bin. So I just do a circuit of all of those for a few years until I moved out to Colorado. Colorado, honestly, a horrible spot for dollar bins. People always mention Mile High. It's all right. It's not for me. There's definitely no hot flips to be achieved there. It's like a 6.5 hour drive from where I'm at. I'm down in Durango, Colorado by Four Corners, and the nearest comic shop proper is down in Albuquerque, about a 4 hour drive away. So
Wow.
yeah, so it's just like I'm just at the grindstone working my way through like as many long boxes as I can jam into the car. But I make that I just crank it down 70 two, sometimes three times a year. And it gets pretty nice once I'm across the Mississippi, because then it is Indiana, Akron, Columbus, and Pittsburgh. And then I'll just do that for a week and a half, head on home.
Matt wants to know, this was one of my questions as well, so I'll piggyback. But as far as a comic creator, who's an inspiration for you? When it comes to art or storytelling or whatever.
I grew up on the Fantagraphics guys. I like Dan Clow's 8 Ball, Peter
Oh,
Bag 8.
yes. Yeah,
Right on.
dude, I can totally see that in the way you do things. I really can.
I think if I'm bringing anything through, it's just kind of like a snot-nosed rudeness, and not quite the draftsmanship, not quite the timeless quality of their work, but I like my Harvey Picar. Anymore I find myself reading mostly just the autobio work of like friends, acquaintances, peers, contemporaries. Speaking of the rigidity of age, instead of my horizons broadening, I find myself mostly just reading work that, as like fresh and exciting as it feels for me when I crack it open on paper, probably isn't very different from my own.
Um, I I the thing I really like about the storytelling in your comic, it feels very Harvey Picar to me. In turn, I don't know if you've read much American Splendor, but
Since an early age, I remember the movie came out and I lucked into like a mass market paperback collecting, or I guess just like a big book. Paul Giamatti was even on the cover, but is at the local library. had a
Yeah,
lot of the Crumb stuff and then a lot of the later stuff too. But
right. Now,
Picard was big for me.
yeah, Picard, like the thing I like about him is, I mean, he's a guy that works at a post office and he just talks to the people around his city, and he's just telling stories about his life, but he does it with there's something about the way that he presents things that makes you care about it. And your book is basically about a guy traveling the country. Sometimes it's just one page about one store, and the next page is a different store, a different part of your adventure. But it seems like you take something that little piece of character out of a store, where sometimes it's you getting enraged because people are in your personal space when you're trying to dig. One of my favorites was like overhearing creepy guys talk about Supergirl, and what I'd like to do to Supergirl. It's like, she's a drawing. You shouldn't.
If I had a nickel for every time I'd heard some old guys carrying on with their Supergirl innuendo, because it feels hack, right?
Right.
Like people in comic shops want to fuck Supergirl. It's like, but it just left and right. I can't believe how common it is. And then, I try to like, I'd like to think that if anybody's like familiar with my work, they'll permit me that there's some level of self-awareness, because I'm definitely given over so much of my own like time and thought, and like dedicated myself to these goofy characters of such little consequence in the grand scheme of things. And I guess so far as like the connection that I feel to American Splendor and Picard's work is and I've got a column coming out in this magazine called American Nature in a month or two that my buddies put together. But I was just writing about like early influences and things that, like, because I feel that like long boxes, it's definitely not without precedent. And I feel like it was even kind of like perfected from the get-go by Picard in American Splendor, because there's a fair amount of like him just like buying a record for $10 and then like, oh, I can't believe it, this thing's worth $20. That guy has no idea or whatever.
Yes. Oh, that's funny. We're getting some glare on your camera. I don't know if the
I'm sorry,
sun's
let me fix that.
No, it's okay. So yeah, this is a friend of mine, Chanko. Thanks for being here, buddy. He's talking about Johnny. Johnny's the one who sent a lot of us your book after we had seen it on the list, and he's
Johnny rocks. Thank you so much.
Johnny rocks. He really does. Johnny's a great guy. I saw another question I wanted to hit. Rich is telling you to make sure to hit Cincinnati, that there's a lot of good shops there.
Oh, I was in Cincinnati recently. I went to like a comic and card shop that I liked a lot. And then I went to there were two gigantic, extreme, like tourist attraction level flea markets that were amazing. There was one that was circus themed that I had a blast at.
Traders World?
Yes. Yeah. Cincinnati was a whole lot of fun.
Traders World. I took my whole family there. Again, my father, the flipper, he's like, you got to go to Traders World. So we went, and that is the damnedest place. I mean, every time you turn a corner, there's another building, right?
Yeah.
There were several toy, and there were a lot of good shops there. There was a lot of good picking there, but there was a lot of weird stuff too. Like when we went, every other shop seemed to be selling cornhole sets or those like tumblers that people like get, and they have a machine that they can make their own like drink holder or something. There was a lot of like a lot of weird repetitive stuff, but it was wild.
What knocked me for a loop, because I expected a bunch of Funko Pops, but I feel like I saw like a katana for every man, woman, and child in the United States just at that one. It's like a low grade, dull, shitty katana.
I call those mall ninja. There were
I like that.
So many. That's who it was. Robbie Josephs wants to know, he is a big Golden Age collector. Are there any Golden Age books that you enjoy or that you like?
I wish I was better initiated. I've got some buddies who are so deeply into it, and they I feel like it's impossible to know like the Golden Age comprehensively or inside and out, since so much of it is like lost to history.
Yeah.
But man, I'm still just a baby when it comes to Golden Age stuff. I'm a big fan of those Schomburg covers. So far as I knew, he'd only ever done like the Marvel stuff, but then I got a better look at just some of like the wacky sci-fi stuff that he did. I feel like it's amazing, like with the limitations of printing technology, what he was able to do at the time. And those gorgeous covers of his, I see why they endure, and I see why like the popularity seems to increase. And then
Yeah.
I guess outside of that, I'm a big fan of I mean, like of course Kirby. I think like one of the best things about being a Kirby fan is seeing how his style develops from the '40s through the '80s. But I love Bill Everett, and I should read some more of his Submariner. But I remember I was at there was this like traveling exhibition of Marvel art that was amazing, and I couldn't believe the artists that they'd gotten in it. And my friend Marina helped me and my buddy Andy Weiland. I think anyhow, I'll spare you all the names, but I was down at I was in Columbus with some friends, and I saw in like the program there was no image of it, but it listed the comic and the page number, and I said, "Oh my God, that's Marvel Comics page number such and such. That's the page where I'm pretty sure where Submariner grabs the guy out of the airplane and throws him in the ocean. It's like proto Grand Theft Auto. Like I can't believe they managed this in like almost 100 years ago, and then it was, and then my friends didn't believe me and thought that I'd like peeked ahead or something. But
Yeah.
I love Everett a lot, and then there's another guy whose style that I love to see develop over decades. By the time that he was doing that like short run on Submariner in the '70s, I feel like anymore I don't really go in for like hyper detailed, like carefully filigreed work, but I think Everett had like such an amazing final phase of his career.
Yeah. JSS dropping the link to his Wikipedia page. There is a Monday show on Alan the Comic Collector Geeks channel where they really focus on the Golden Age stuff, and I would consider myself a complete novice when it comes to the Golden Age, aside from the things I've learned from them. And all of those names that you mentioned are names that they talk about a lot, especially Schomburg. Schomburg is a big favorite.
You know
Um,
my EC guys inside out at this point. I feel like I definitely absorbed a ton of EC stuff in my
yeah.
20s.
Oh yeah. I still. I mean, I think Wally Wood is his covers and things for weird science and weird fantasy are just some of my favorites. Though, and like you said, the limitation of those older guys, they didn't have the printing processes we have. They didn't have the coloring. It was four colors that they could mix together. And that the really good ones still endure because they're amazing. So I think, you know, I don't know. I don't know what my point was, except to say that I agree with you that those guys were masters and maybe not appreciated in their time. So it makes me happy to know that they're still being appreciated now. Is there? We just got done talking about artists and writers a little bit. I mean, I consider a lot of those indie guys like Dan Klaus and Harvey Picar. I mean, Harvey Picar was not an artist; he was a writer, but most of them are just storytellers, even if they happen to draw and write. And Klaus, he's one that no matter what, if he has a new book come out, I'm gonna read it. Uh,
Mandatory.
so I was gonna ask, is there anybody like that for you?
Oh, I'll provide just one example to spare you the extremely long-winded version. There definitely is. I think there's a lot of like indie creators that feel mandatory for me. If I'm a big guy. Trying to think. Yeah, I feel like there's nothing from like the major publishers, and I know I'm too cool for school and all that. And people keep telling me that comics are as
Yeah.
good as they've ever been, and I definitely made a habit out of buying them from like being at the shop every Wednesday and picking up stuff. But it was like when I was a teenager working fast food jobs, and all of it was disposable income, and I just bought so much crap, Spider-Man and X-Men, that I like it felt like a chore to read that I just kind
Yeah.
of like
Yeah.
put me off of it for life, I feel like. But I recently read the new Craig Thompson book and thought it was amazing.
Oh,
Ginseng Roots.
what is that?
It's called Ginseng Roots, and
Okay.
it's about it covers a ton of ground. It's by the same guy who did best known for Blankets, but then
Right.
Habibi is the
Yeah.
better
Yeah.
book of his. I feel like my buddy Frank put it pretty succinctly when he saw me flipping through a copy of Blankets one time, and he said, don't read that. It'll rot your teeth out. And it's a cool book, but it's just like the poor guy, and he even gets into it in Ginseng Roots, where it's like he worked his ass off on it at an early age, and there's so much to like about it, but like his entire life is in the shadow of like an autobiographical work of like him as like moody teenager having his first serious romance. Anyhow, Ginseng Roots rocked, and I gotta say that it may seem like it's pretty far outside of your or my wheelhouse, but I feel like it's almost like, and I really flatter myself by comparing myself to Craig Thompson here. I'm surprised at how much it has in common with whatever I'm writing about comic books or being in comic shops, comic culture. What I really got a kick out of is I picked up, it wasn't even a collection, it was just old stock from a shop that had gone out of business back in the early 80s, maybe mid 80s in or near Colorado Springs. And in this book, Thompson is writing about when he and his brother were kids, and they just like worked their ass off in the fields all summer long, pulling rocks out of the ground, like just like routinely exposed to pesticide, just like pulling out weeds for 12 hours at a time in the hot sun, and they spent it all on Marvel and DC comics. And but it was so funny to me where it's just like they would work for an hour to buy one Hulk comic that they would treasure and read and share and obsess over, and they knew it by heart. And like, but then it's like the stock that I had just picked up shortly before reading this from Colorado Springs. There was like 47 copies of the same issue of Incredible Hulk. Like, what the fuck am I going to do with all of these? No.
Wow.
And so
Wow.
that, but then it's like total like opposite ends of the spectrum of
Right.
like how precious it is. So I feel like it added like an extra like spice to me, like seeing these two kids just like dedicating like the absolute limit of their physical ability to getting these comics that are so like chock a block for me now, you know?
Right. That's really funny. I had a friend up and Adam give it another shout out to Johnny's comic stuff because
Shout
he
out to Johnny. Thank
passed
you.
your stuff to everybody, and then JSS dropped his link. So yeah, anybody who's in the chat or watching this later, if you're not subscribed to Johnny, go check him out. He cleans and presses. He has a really good collection. And just in general, a big fan of comics, and just
I've been looking for a new cleaner and presser. That's my man now. This works out pretty good.
there you go. All right, we'll get you in contact with him. He's on Instagram too. I did not know Craig Thompson had a new one out. I'm gonna check it out. He's somebody else who like blankets came out when I worked at a comic book store, so that was one that I would like. If somebody came in looking for indie stuff, that was a book that we would push because
Can't go
it was the
wrong.
book. No, it's the book at the time. It's a good one. He works a lot in DC, maybe Marvel, but Jeff Lemire is somebody. His indie stuff I think is really really good. And
I've
if
never
you
read
have,
anything of his since Essex County.
oh,
I read the
that,
trilogy and I loved it. And it's like I sure do admire the guy for it. And it's nice too seeing somebody who can like work just in a very tactile way with pen and ink like that, who's
yeah,
unafraid of leaving the trace of his own hand on the page.
Essex County is like it's just one of the best things I definitely one of the best things I read last year because it was the first time I read it. But I still think about it sometimes. It was just such a well put together like epic story, and the art, like you said, it's so like it's so unafraid to be what it is, and I love that. Like I love how bold and crunchy some of it is. It really fit. It was so well done. He has one called Underwater Welder that I liked a lot, that I feel like might be a little bit autobiographical as well, and maybe that's why it hits so good. But
I read that one too, yeah.
I liked that one a lot too. um let's see. Yeah, loose inks can be nice. I agree. Everything doesn't have to be pretty. um I, I really don't have many other questions outside of just wanting to pick your brain a little bit about what I guess why do you continue to create this book? What is it that you're getting out of this as a creator?
I feel very lucky that I not that I feel like I was spinning my wheels a little bit there, where in the same way that a lot of artists, indie and otherwise, seem to do in or outside of comics, there's like the tail wagging the dog of I would like to make comics. What is it that I want to say? What is the vision that I wish to like siphon through from the other side of the veil? Uh, what is uh, what is it that like makes my specific voice like worth like seeking out and paying money for? I don't think it was there for we'll say a year or two at the very least, but I definitely did a great deal of trial and error, and I think about. I guess maybe at this point it feels like as far as I could be, for better or worse, from having some type of writer's block. Where I've always like had some like contempt for the notion, where it's like if you feel obstructed in some way creatively, it means you're just not. You ought to just pay more attention to your life outside of whatever you're putting down on paper. But outside of my sanctimony, I suppose what I'm trying to say here is when I started doing long boxes, I thought surely the 5, 6, 7 pages and that'll exhaust whatever type of like milk toast critique I have of like modern comic shop culture. But I found myself just doing it in dribs and drabs, and I'm definitely in the habit of it. And I feel like the amount of scrutiny I'm lending myself on, like, is what you're saying, like, is it you still contributing something of substance and originality? Are you repeating yourself? Are you like making the same point or two tediously again and again and again? I don't think so. But
I
I'm just so in the habit of doing it, and it feels good. And I feel like just I spent so much time trying to get out of my own way and trying to just like let myself like if I have fun doing it and it comes easily from my hand and people report back to me positively about it, why would I change a thing?
is it is it like is it a little bit therapeutic for you to document these journeys that you go on? Is it like, it's almost, it strikes me almost like a public journal. Like, I went to this store, you name the store a lot of times, the people, if you know who they are, but whatever your experience was at that place, it feels a little it just feels a little like you're processing through something that you like, the nuggets that you choose to illustrate. You're processing through something that you overheard or an interaction that you had. And I just wonder if that feels, like I said, therapeutic or cathartic for you to get through that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's nice too because I feel like I crack some jokes about like how silly it is to be angsty, especially about your art, especially when you're making indie comics. What's the point of martyring yourself or agonizing over like your long hours at the drawing table? If it feels nice, if it feels good, if you feel better on the other end of it, then why not, chase it out to whatever conclusion it ends up being. Public journal is a good way of putting it. I don't know if it started out that way, but that's absolutely what it's turned into. And I gotta say, I've got some envy for people who have like the care and the forethought to document their life from day to day, or loosely week to week. But I'm glad I'm glad I got there, because it wasn't like super high on my list of priorities. But I'm happy to have the habit.
I I think it's extremely neat. It's slice of life, and for someone like me, for a reader, it's a way to vicariously go check these places out. Like, I'm not going to get to some of these places, some of these states probably, and you visit a lot of shops, so it's just kind of a peek into some of these other places, and that's neat. But it's also kind of a peek into, I think, you as a person, like what you're experiencing and how you feel about that. Some of it, sometimes it's just really funny. You have these interactions with people where you're digging and they get in on your space, or you turn around and someone. One of my favorites was when you had a used handkerchief that you put on top of your box of picked comics so that nobody would go pick through it because they wouldn't leave it alone. So I do want to make sure Johnny's here. So Johnny, we've been singing your praises.
Johnny, hell yeah.
So thank you, Johnny, for sending me these comics and for sending them to other people in our community. And Nate, that Nate is going to get a hold of you because he's going to want to talk about cleaning and pressing stuff too. So He says, Nate McDonough, I have the have sex sticker you sent me with the books on my comic storage. I love it. My wife hates it, especially since it glows in the dark.
That's from my buddy Victor Cairo. He did the cover to issue number 69.
Nice. Yeah, that's the one I'm honestly a little afraid to show on camera. Like,
hey, fair enough. And I feel like 69 jokes are ordinarily beneath me, but that man sure has made a fine craft out of making dirty, dirty jokes.
Yeah, I do not feel like they're beneath me. I don't feel like anything is beneath me. But yeah, I really do love the book, and I appreciate you being here and talking to us about it. Like I said, all your links are in this video description. JSS has been dropping them. Is there anything else you want to chat about? I feel like you've answered every question I've got, and not only have you answered every question I've got, like your answers have made me really happy. Like, our overlap continues. A lot of these artists and creators, that I kind of get a feel for when I read this, you're acknowledging that they're there, that we like these same things.
Well, I'll finish by saying, if I didn't have to be somewhere in 10 minutes, I'd be bending your ear till you gently hedged me toward a conclusion. This interview made me very happy. This was fun. It was really great talking to you. I hope we can do it again.
Absolutely, we can.
I will be in touch. Just send me your phone number, man. I'll hit you up, and then we will do at least one shop together in person in 2-3 weeks down the road. Okay. And once more, thank you, Johnny.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Johnny. And yeah, whenever you do wheel through town, we'll talk. We'll figure something out, because it doesn't have to be just one shop. I'm a marathon digger too, so as long as things are handled at home, I'm always down for an all-day adventure.
Hell yeah.
And yeah, we'll document it, and it'll be a blast. So I will take credit for finding the cover. And but Johnny did the follow through, because I did look for it at my shop. I was like, oh, they didn't have that Grixly one. But he found you online and ordered a buttload of Grixly and just sent it to all of us. So we have had a decent amount of people here tonight, as always. So thank you, everybody who's been in the chat. I'm sorry if I missed some of your questions. I tried to get to the ones that I saw, but I'm not, ADHD. What are you going to do? Thank you, Nate McDonough, for being here. And yes, we will do this again sometime. We'll have you on, and we'll just hang out and talk comics again. All right. So we're going to say goodbye. Everybody have a great rest of your day.
Bye, everybody. Thanks, guys.
Just hang out for a minute, Nate, but I'm going to click the end button.